Welcome to Profit Knocks,
a show about why to invest in real estate, how to do it the right way, what to buy, when to sell, and where to look.
We talk to successful experts, unlock global opportunities, and show you ways to reach what matters most.
Profits.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Profit Knocks. I'm your host, Denise Katarovic. Today we're talking all about property security, whether it's a multifamily unit, a single family home, a development, or a construction site in its beginning stages. Your property can be a target for criminal activity. And our next guest today is here to protect and serve. But first, I want to introduce my co-host, and that's George Vega. He is the Chief Operations Officer for Inter Properties, a developer and investor here in Chicago, and the founder of Rapid Offer, a home buying company. But our special guest is Wade Ingram. And Wade, you have 40 years of experience in law. I'm going to read off your resume because it's beautiful. It's beautiful. 40 years of experience in law enforcement starting in 1980 with Cook County Sheriff's Department. In 1985, you joined the Chicago PD, where you worked gang crimes, patrolling public housing. You reached sergeant, lieutenant, and watch commander at O'Hare. You were a police chief in Markham, Illinois, and Gary, Indiana.
Yes, that's correct.
And you also had a lot of impressive education. You got a BA, a master's, and you had some training even from Northwestern and the FBI. Did I leave anything out?
That's enough. That's enough. We don't want to bore the audience. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Denise, George, thank you for inviting me
Thank
here.
you, Wade.
Absolutely. Well, and you own Ingram Security. But before you talk about what your company is, I wanted to read a quote from your website because I thought it kind of just nails everything we're going to be talking about. Are you ready? People, belongings, premises. We live in a world where everything and everyone is a target, and safety is what you make it. There is no safer place to be than in the hands of an experienced professional that can assess the subtle difference between friend and foe.
That's correct.
Did you write that?
I wrote that. That's what I do.
Did you?
That's what I do.
That just nails it all.
That's what I do.
Yeah, you protect and serve, and you help people realize that, hey, someone can be your friend and someone's not your friend.
That's right. All of us are targets.
Right. Okay, well, tell us about Ingram Security.
Ingram Security, I incorporated this company about 10 years ago, in between jobs as chief of police, and I mainly focus on construction sites. I do residential security. I serve summons. I do background checks. I do fingerprints. I do a number of things in terms of security for the last 10 years here in Chicago. Last 12 years.
Has your law enforcement background helped you to make this company what it is today?
Most of the contracts I get is because I'm a former police officer, and I do have some relationships still within the police department that I can call upon to assist me with my private security.
Okay.
Fantastic.
All right. So you provide security for developments and like all kinds of buildings,
Yes.
but construction sites, that kind of struck me as, why would that be a target?
Well, you have thieves that go out and steal. In particular, I had one situation in a suburb of Chicago where they had spent $100,000 on copper. They had roughed in the copper and they were waiting for the city to come in and inspect it, and someone stole all the copper. And they enlisted my help. I came out until everything was done, when everything was roughed in, and we saved them a bunch of money. They had relied on a local police department to kind of like be vigilant and watch over the property at night.
Drive by and make sure there's no activity.
But the police are busy. They're short-handed. They're short-staffed. So they hired my company, and the houses were going for like $800,000, and it was a success. We stayed there until everything was turned over to the company that's going to manage the property.
So they got away with a little copper, but what you did was stop more theft from going on.
Exactly.
As soon as you took over the project, from that point on, people knew, hey, hands off, this area is secured now.
Well, we were dedicated to that site. The police have to go all over town or wherever, but we were just dedicated to that site. We operate with vehicles, so I had a company vehicle to sit right where the copper was at, the copper that wasn't roughed in. So we put the car there. I even had a K9, because humans, if it's 3 o'clock in the morning, humans may have a tendency to fall asleep. But if I have a K9, a dog there, he's more sensible, and his hearing is a lot better than a human.
Correct.
Oh, yeah. He'll wake up and bark.
And I have an obligation. I have an obligation to the people that hired me.
Right.
You know what I mean? You are paying me to protect your property. And I take pride in that, and I take it serious that, this person trusts me to do a job.
Yeah, and then with the material cost over the years that have continued to increase, that could be hundreds of thousands of dollars lost in one theft, right?
Or your insurance claim.
Or your insurance claim, which again just diminishes the amount that you receive back in the future of this investment. There was a huge time where stealing copper, even from residential, was big. They would break into homes that were recently renovated. They would steal all the copper from these properties, and then they would go off and pawn it off to your local recycler.
Or rip the cabinets off the walls.
Yeah.
They'd go as far as to take the fixtures and the cabinets.
Yes, depending on at what stage we intervene. Normally, when I'm doing a construction site, it's there at the beginning. It's to protect the workers. Okay, we've had situations where there were those who were protesting about fairness and employment, and they'll take over construction sites and scare off all the workers.
Okay.
So we will be there in the daytime to protect the workers as well as the property, because a lot of community activists will feel like, you should hire people from the community, and they'll shut down a construction site.
You've seen this happen?
Oh, it has happened to me before.
Yeah, not only that, we've had people within our realm that have started construction on a property, and it's not only the advocates, but you also get your neighborhood thugs that would come in and say, hey, you can't construct here without us getting paid as well.
You mean people who live in the neighborhood would come and say, no, we're going to take some part of this?
People from the neighborhood, or a local thug, a local crime organization that's in the neighborhood that comes in and says, we want to get paid.
Yes.
Right? We want to get paid.
Okay.
So things like that do happen in our world.
Right.
And and having someone with the extensive background in police enforcement,
law enforcement
security,
was very important, because I knew what to say when I called a dispatcher. Most of the police officers I knew. Okay, they quickly responded to the scene. They had a talk with the guys and told them if they come back, they will be arrested for criminal trespass to land. Okay, and we never had any more incidents. That's where having a law enforcement background helps out.
So you're on the property, and if you see some criminal activity going on, you call the police, or how do you respond to it?
Okay, first thing I do is notify 911, and then I begin to intervene and investigate, why is this person doing what. In the meantime, my help is on the way.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Are you, and I think we talked about this, are you and your the people you hire, are they armed, unarmed?
Depending on what we're doing.
Okay.
If we're just sitting in an apartment building, signing in guests, we're usually unarmed because we're indoors. But at a construction site, we are armed.
Okay, so you mean when a building's already being occupied and people are coming and going,
right,
that front security?
Visitors, yeah. But a construction site, we are armed.
Okay. What kind of criminal activities do you see besides the theft? Is there vandalism of properties that are sitting unoccupied yet? And I'm assuming most of it is unoccupied that you're patrolling. Mm-hmm. Do you see a lot of...
You said for unoccupied?
Yeah.
Well, if you talk
I guess for both, but...
Well, let's talk about occupied property.
Okay.
Occupied property, the number one thing is drug dealing. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they deal in drugs because they need to pay the rent. Back when I was a kid, they had rent parties, you know what I mean? You invite all your friends over and they pay $1, $2 to pay the rent at the end of the month. But the thing that I see in occupied property mainly is drug dealing. Not only drug dealing, but not able to control your guests. You are responsible, you should be responsible for your guests. Mm-hmm. Your guests shouldn't be allowed to urinate on the property. They shouldn't be making loud noise to disturb the neighbors.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So we find a lot of that smoking marijuana. People are confused about that here in Illinois.
Because it's somewhat legal here. I don't know, somewhat, or if it is.
What are you doing a multi-unit building? Right. I mean, this is my apartment. Can I smoke a joint in this apartment?
Here's my medical card.
Right.
Yeah, but George may not like that. You know, he may...
Because it's very odoriferous.
Or he may have sinus or, some type of other illness.
Or maybe I just don't want my children around stuff
But
like that.
it's
Right.
what
Yeah.
you designate the building as. The properties that I patrol are smoke-free properties, okay? Because we do have public housing residents. We have a percentage who get government assistance, and then we have market renters as well. So the buildings have been basically designated smoke-free, unlike, say, a condominium building, okay, which basically a person has.
You own it.
Right, so you can smoke marijuana in your apartment. But since these buildings have been designated as smoke-free, you can't smoke cigarettes as well as marijuana.
How do you know what's going in as a security person? How do you know what's going on inside? Are you hearing rumors, or if
In
it's
terms of
behind
what
closed?
well, we
like
can
an
smell-
occupied building.
We can smell the marijuana, and usually the neighbors call.
Okay, the neighbors are the ones
person next to you,
calling.
because it goes through the ventilation system.
And hey, there's a raucous party going on. I'm hearing the noise. I'm seeing a lot of shady people coming and
my
going.
responsibility is to notify the managers. We have reports, and we write up a report, and we give it to the manager, and the manager resolve those issues. We're just there as security, but the managers manage the property.
Right.
Okay.
So if a person, if you make a complaint against George about his marijuana, his smoke, or his loud music, or his guests making a lot of noise, or whatever, we'll just write up an incident report, and then the manager will speak to him the next day.
Let's say I come to you and I'm the manager of the property. I own this property. I have this tenant. I've told them multiple times. I've also given them, documentation saying, hey, we need to stop this from happening. At what point can I come to you, Wade, and say, Wade, now we need to take it a step further. Now we need to really let them know that, hey, it's going to get serious after this. What happens? What can I do?
Well, first of all, it should probably be in your lease.
Right.
Whatever agree.
It's always in the lease.
It's always in the lease.
With these criminal activities, it's always in the lease, yet no one respects that.
It happens
But
anyway.
a lot of municipalities are going to these crime-free ordinances.
Right.
When I was police chief in Markham, we were one of the first municipalities in Illinois to come up with that. And basically, you can let your tenant know that these are the things that the municipality require of me. Okay, we want to be crime-free, loud noise, drag racing, hanging out front, drinking on the property, selling drugs, all of these things. It basically, I am supposed to evict you.
Right.
So in addition to that lease, these are the things that the municipality is requiring. It's a nuisance ordinance.
Right.
Okay. So a lot of municipalities, I think it may be about 200 municipalities in Illinois who have gone to the tenant landlord nuisance ordinance, crime-free ordinance is what they call them in some places.
Yeah, I was representing one of my investors in Chicago Heights. They had that ordinance. It was very interesting. He got a notification saying he had to go take a course. He sits down in this course, gets a certificate, pays the certificate amount, but then that certificate gives them the obligation, not only as a landlord, to say, hey, when I see something that's happening in my building, I have to notify not only the police officers, but I have to notify the city. And then take it another step further and say, now I have the right. The contract was breached. In addition
To the contract, I've also got this tool.
right now,
use.
I can evict you.
Right.
So I think it's a win-win as far as keeping crime out of your building. But I know that there are other bigger cities where this is frowned upon, where they feel that, hey, it's borderline coming across as illegal evictions, basically.
Interesting.
Well, one of the things that I proposed when I was chief in Gary is that unlike Chicago, it's more rural, less urban. We had a lot of gas stations. That's basically where homicides would occur, robberies, drug dealings. Hey, you want drugs? Meet me at the gas station. And I had proposed that we have a camera system, a surveillance system. But I feel the same way about property as well, especially multi-unit buildings where people people don't really want to tell you turn down your music, don't smoke weed, so people are a little afraid, and people hanging out drinking. I would like to see in these multi-unit buildings that we have some type of ring system or some type of surveillance system. So it's nothing like seeing for yourself.
Right.
And that could be part of the evidence when you take your tenant to court. In addition to the lease, in addition to the ordinance, and require that the landlord have some type of camera system there. And so when you evict them and you go back to the housing advocates, we can show the housing advocate, look what your client is doing. Look at it for yourself.
Right.
Do most of those buildings not have CCTV already?
The buildings that I patrol don't have it.
They don't have it.
They don't have it.
And are we talking about just the outsides, or can you even put
We have
CCTV in the hallways?
You know what? We do have it, but the manager have it. Now, some buildings are set up where actually it's security's job to monitor the floor, say multi-unit buildings, okay? So we can zero in on the 15th floor, the 7th floor, the second floor. We can do that. And the buildings that I have, they're not equipped with that, but we do have a surveillance camera system on the inside, not on the outside.
Okay.
But it's up to the manager. The manager usually comes in and she runs the tape to see who was doing something at 4 o'clock in the morning. But I would basically, if we had a government ordinance, the municipality should require that they have some type of surveillance around there, because there have been crimes committed in front of people's property, which have been crucial in terms of solving a crime. You know, people do drive-bys, you know what I'm saying? So if they had a outdoor surveillance system, I think that would really increase the safety.
Well, it's a big, cameras are a big deterrent.
Yes,
They're
they are.
everywhere in today's society, and I think that people know they're being watched and their activities are being monitored.
Well, you know, the city of Chicago just implemented something very, very unique, where they are paying property owners to install cameras. They're basically reimbursing them for these camera installations. And they're doing it on the pretext that if we give you this money to pay for these cameras, can you kindly share the feed to us? Right? It's not an obligation,
right,
but can you kindly share that feed with us? And you're right, Wade. At the end of the day, you know, having that burden of proof in your hands, it goes a long way, not only in the courts, but in proving to the rest of the world that, hey, listen, we're not the bad guys. We're trying to stop this from happening. You know, on top of the fact that you also mentioned that, you know, you are, as a landlord, responsible for the guests that go into these homes, right, into these units, and you want everyone to be safe.
Guests of the tenants, you mean?
Not only guests of the tenants, but people that are staying there as their home, you know, for the period of time that they want to live in this unit, right? So it's our responsibility to make sure that these people are safe. Having a camera system is important.
Oh, yes, I would think so.
I want to go back to what Denise said about cameras being a deterrent. I kind of disagree with that.
Oh, let's hear why.
Because, of course, I'm a little biased because I'm a police officer and in security. I think that a person, a human being, is the deterrent. I think the cameras are kind of like is good to assist. For example, I do church security. I have several churches I provide security for, and we have cameras. But there's nothing like me standing there in my uniform. There's nothing like me sitting in that lobby when you come in and I say, "Good morning, Denise, how are you?" When people get ready to commit crimes, when I was in charge of one of the city colleges security for the city colleges of Chicago, we would see the people breaking in the cars. They have hoods on. It was useless.
The cameras can't help at all then.
The cameras were useless. We had them.
Yes.
We watching them steal the catalytic converters. We watch them stealing the cars, doing all of that, but they have a hood on. There's nothing like having a person there. I just left the bank. I just left Chase Bank. And I've been saying this for years because the FBI been saying like we got like a 200 or 300% increase in bank robberies. Well, to me, it's after 40 years. The number one problem is you don't have the old retired cop in there as the bank guard.
Right.
Now they're going back to security in there. At least you see a guy in there with a gun.
Right.
Before then, they got rid of all of the security in the banks.
Right.
They got rid of all the security in the grocery stores because they relied on the cameras.
That's such a good point. And you know what, even as a woman too, if I'm going into a parking garage or it's dark and I'm parking my car going in to visit somebody, if I see a man like yourself in that impressive uniform, I instantly feel safe.
You feel
instantly.
safer.
And the cameras don't mean anything. I feel safe looking at you.
Well, that's because we've all been jaded now with cameras. Right? There's cameras everywhere.
I guess
right?
so.
Right.
Everyone's recording something. I mean, you can't walk down the street without someone doing some sort of recording somehow, some way. So the cameras have jaded everyone, and it feels as if they're not even there. Right? So you
forget about them.
You forget about them. You don't care about them. So when a criminal wants to commit an act, whether there's a camera there or not, they feel, hey, I'll be one recording out of 1,000 million recordings that they probably have to go through.
Right.
The cameras are good for solving crimes, just like last week with this 41-year-old guy who was robbed downtown, stabbed in the neck. It was all captured on video surveillance. But the old police officer a few feet away would have deterred him more than that camera up there.
Right.
I'm just saying that the cameras are good. They good for assisting with crime solving. We want to solve a crime, but I think that we need more visibility of police and security. I'm very happy that the city of Chicago, as well as other municipalities, are turning to private security like me. When I was out here in this exclusive suburb of Chicago, you know what I mean? They should have recommended that the person go to a private security company like me.
Well, like you said, the police are busy.
But they said, okay,
you almost
we'll
have
do
to.
it.
Yeah,
We'll
you have
do
to
it.
hire somebody like yourself.
You have to, because we're dedicated.
Right.
I'm only going to be right at this construction site. I'm not going to be 2 miles away writing a ticket.
You know,
Right.
I have a story here where, someone sideswiped my car. I pull over, call the police come. I give them the plate number for the car who did this, right? And I go, hey guys, aren't you gonna go and chase them down and go look for them? And you know what the police officer did? He turned on his radio for me to hear.
Oh.
And there was call after call after call after call. He's like, I'd love to go do that for you.
Right.
But we are very busy. You're alive, you're happy.
And I'll do a
move
report
on.
for your insurance company.
Right.
You're alive, move on. That's
Oh,
what he
good
said.
golly.
And I understood 100% right there and then. Their hands are full. They're going for the guy who's actually in the middle of stabbing someone versus
gosh. Right.
my car incident. So that being said, again, if you have a security guard at your project, whether you're building or whether it's already running, having the proper security there deters a lot of crime.
How busy are you, Wade?
Nowadays.
Very busy. But see, here's the thing about it, though, is that a lot of residents want all of this. They want to go to heaven, but they don't want to die. Okay. They want all this top-notch security,
Right.
but they don't want to pay because you have to pay for security. And I understand that, whether it's security or a public police department, when you're sleeping at night, even though you're living in your own house, you're not in an apartment building. But you could just have to pass the cost along to your residents.
Right.
And we do a lot, and I have discussions with my managers. When you guys leave at 4 o'clock, guess what? We're here to midnight.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, people breaking in apartments, internally, unruly guests, okay? People just doing whatever. It's good to have the security is like a private police department for a company or a person or apartment building. We do what you ask us to do.
Right.
You know?
And you're going to do what you're hired to do, and you're always going to be
And
there.
you got the cameras too to bag up what we were saying.
Right.
And
right.
and here's another thing, as a property owner, right? Something like this also helps me if I ever have to go to court, right? If the tenants ever, say that I didn't do enough, I've hired companies, right? I've installed cameras, and now I have a security guard 24/7 there.
And we do reports. We give them to the company. They take it to their legal department because, they have to actually file for the discovery or whatever to get reports and things like that. But we do have a report, and then we have cameras. So it's pretty effective,
Right. Right.
So let's talk about, because we covered a lot of things that Ingram Security does. You guys do background checks. You obviously protect sites, buildings. You hire, your company would be, for example, the front desk person when people are going in and out of their apartment building. You do that. But you guys also do your process servers when it comes to evictions,
Yes, I do.
correct?
Yes, I
Tell
do.
us about that.
Well, actually, right here, here at Lobby Space, it's been great for me. My friend George here, he's into the real estate business, and Constantine. We had another young lady here, Gina. She was a managing agent for a company in New York that owned a lot of property in Chicago. Let me just give you an example. And it is kind of dangerous to go to somebody's house, okay? apartment and say, hey, you know what, here's a 5-day notice, or here's a 30-day notice, or 10-day notice, whatever the notices are. And that's one of the things that I would do for her. We have several attorneys here. I've done it for them. Is that when they want to evict a tenant or serve a 5-day notice to get the eviction process started, then I will go out as a security officer with my uniform on, and actually I do carry a body camera. In case we have to show that to the judge, because we have had situations where the person said they were not served. Oh, they didn't serve me.
And you did, in fact, serve them?
Yes, I indeed.
Yes, you did.
But it's usually my word against theirs. But guess what? I had this, and I was willing to come in and show it to the judge. And the person right away said, that's all right, he did serve me. So I do carry this body camera because it protects me as well, because I had to serve a federal judge and I didn't know he was a federal judge. Of course, I'm always professional, but I served a federal judge, and the attorney told me later on, he said, hey, how was the judge? I said, what judge you talking about? He said, that guy's a federal judge. I'm like, oh, I didn't know. So, but yeah, so those some of the things we do. We serve summons. So it's a danger factor. Of course, I am armed. Okay, we don't go to the best neighborhoods sometime, and it's kind of dangerous. I've been out there, and this is where my police background has helped me. You got guys down the block maybe selling drugs. You got thugs hanging around, driving around. I'm more afraid of the dogs than anything, because everybody has a dog. When you knock on that door and they open it up, maybe a pit bull there.
Yeah, and that's one thing. I used to serve my own as well, right? And that's one thing that I will confirm 100%. You never know what's behind that door, and when you knock on it, again, you're telling someone to leave their home.
You don't know what you're going to deal with in terms of anger and danger.
It becomes personal.
They don't know me. They know him.
Right.
They take it personal.
It becomes very personal. They say, hey, I pay you, your place is this, and then all of a sudden you're in an argument. Suddenly you're hoping that the police get there on time.
Oh my goodness.
So having someone like Wade to go out there and do the serving puts that layer there that says, hey, I'm not the bad guy. I'm just here to do my job. My job is to give you this document. Right.
So you have a job that, and your law enforcement experience must give you the confidence, because you do put yourself in such dangerous situations to protect other people.
I did it for 34 years back in law enforcement. But going back to what George said, I had a guy in Hyde Park. I don't know if you're familiar with Hyde Park in Chicago. He owns a lot of property, a lot of multi-unit buildings. And he did like George. He told the guy, hey, you know what? I'm going to evict you. And the guy told him, okay, remember, I know where you live at. So his wife, he had a wife, 2 kids, they were coming home one evening. And the guy, spooked her. He, say, hey, hi, it's George. And he drove off. So when he got home that night, the wife said, hey, look. She said, you know what, when we have a problem with plumbing, what do we do? He said, we hire a plumber. When you have an electrical problem, she said, you're putting me and these kids in danger. When we need an electrician, what do? We call an electrician. She said, you start calling the cops. You start hiring the law enforcement, police officers, or whoever. She said, because we're not safe. This guy approached us. And she said, yeah, he had told me he know where we live at. So sometimes it's best to hire security because it's less personal.
Right.
I basically know how to detect certain things just from my law enforcement experience. Kind of know how to get out of a few little situations, even if I have to talk my way out, or maybe perhaps shoot my way out if I have to. But the wife said the thing, why are you serving your tenants?
That makes a lot of sense.
That just makes so much sense.
You could just pay me to do it.
Right.
If you need an electrician, you would just call an electrician.
Right.
So she says, after that, he said, hey, look, my wife said no more, no mas.
Right. No, I would think that you would be a very respectable force. So that does not surprise me that people would need a firm like Ingram Security to get the job done, right?
In some of these cases, you have hardened criminals
Yes, you do.
who are living in some of these units. And,
Right.
the moment they tell you, and it could escalate very fast, very fast. People don't understand how fast it could escalate. One criminal moves in, suddenly there's 2, 3 that move in, and suddenly it becomes a storefront
Right.
for whatever criminal activity they're doing.
Right.
And you as a landlord, you're just praying that the place gets condemned by the city so that everyone can leave, right?
Oh, good golly.
Because you can't even step foot in that area without them knowing, hey, there goes the landlord. What does he want? Get out of here, right? It's
Right.
our building now.
And I wear a uniform when I serve summonses. One of my friends, he wears blue jeans and a T-shirt. I don't do that. I let you see what you're getting into.
That's part of the image.
Yeah.
It's like you
Yeah.
see somebody like yourself.
I really
and-
haven't had a problem. Let me knock on wood. I really haven't had a problem because of my approach. And there's nothing like seeing is believing.
Right.
When you walked in, I was like, whoa.
Yeah,
Let me
definitely.
go put my blue jeans back on.
No, I like it.
Definitely.
I do want to get back to one thing we kind of touched on, but when these developments are going up in the city and in neighborhoods, you think it's important to get the community involved and get the community approval.
Well, that's more of a political issue.
But like you said, the people that come around and say, "Hey, give us jobs," and HUD. Does HUD put a certain amount of money aside for you to hire local in the
Well,
neighborhood?
For a construction site, I don't think so. They have like I'm an MBA.
Okay.
MBE rather, Minority Business Enterprise.
Okay.
There's so much government business has to be set aside for women and other racial minorities. Okay. So when you're talking about a construction site, I know when they're building these houses, they do get money from HUD. Okay. And then HUD said, I need you to set aside so many apartments for people who are Section 8
Okay.
in different government programs or whatever. Set aside so many properties for the money that we're going to give you.
So it's not for jobs; it's for units that they can
Right.
live in.
So HUD
Okay.
HUD is specific to housing.
Right.
Their main operation is housing. And whenever a builder comes into a community and says, I'm going to build a multi-unit building here, HUD's operation is how many of those are going to go to the local a low to moderate income community, right?
Right.
Right. And then just to keep peace in the neighborhood, they do hire people with low skills, like a flagger,
Okay.
chilling the trucks.
Sure.
So to fulfill a lot of those obligations for women and minorities, they do have a lot of mainly in the security area. Like we're building a new hospital over here, Rush. So you got to have so much minority participation, and they usually fulfill that with security.
Right.
A minority company such as myself. And so it's basically like doing the security on the grounds, flaggers, and other people like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just to keep the community
It's a
happy.
door opening, right? It opens the door to saying, hey, I worked as a flagger. I really liked what they were doing inside. I want to learn how to do that.
Right.
Right.
You come
Okay.
up to those programs. And then the biggest complaint with that is in the community is that people say that I want to see somebody that look like me in my neighborhood. So a lot of these developers have gotten smart over the years, and they do hire, people from different backgrounds to be a part of that construction site just to have some representation there.
Right. That makes really good sense. And you said too, the rules for market renters are different than public housing.
Yes, it is. I think there's an extra layer of bureaucracy. Whereas if I rent to you personally, I'm just dealing with you. You're a market renter. I'm just dealing with you. But this person over here may be under that HUD, the set aside.
Right.
So now they have to go through HUD or CHA or whatever, Chicago Housing Authority. They may have to go through them as well. So it's an extra layer versus just dealing with that person directly.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. It just adds another layer of paperwork and things you have to do.
Right.
To meet your obligation with that lease agreement. Because remember, whenever you're dealing with a market tenant, the lease agreement is yours. You wrote it, you give it to the tenant either signs or doesn't, right? And as long as it doesn't break any city or government ordinance, you're fine. Now, when you're dealing with a housing voucher program or someone that has a housing voucher, you're not only using your lease, but you're also signing documents that have a government seal on it that say you're going to abide by these rules as well.
Exactly. You got that one extra. And I tell you another thing, those set-aside apartments has to, when you evict this person, that doesn't mean that you're totally protected because you're in a government subsidized apartment.
Right.
Just an extra step. But you got to put another person in there that's in that same situation.
Okay, yes.
Another person that qualifies for Section 8.
For that assistance, yes.
Right. So,
and that's their biggest concern too. Oh, see, you guys want to get smart, okay? So you want to take one of our units and put a market renter in there.
Yeah.
So they kind of strict.
It doesn't work that way.
No, that's one of the things they make you go through.
Right. So Wade, you were in law enforcement for so many years, right? You had relationships with a lot of the building owners. I assume that on your beat, you got to know some of these property owners, right? And some of the people in the community and things like that, shop owners and stuff like that. What are steps that an owner can take to have that good relationship with the local law enforcement?
Well, the number one thing here in Chicago is to go to the CAPS meeting.
Okay.
What is CAPS?
Chicago Alternative Policing Strategy.
Okay.
It's a community meeting. Now, it was real big in the 90s. It was real big. I was a sergeant at the time. It was real big that the officer who worked the beat will meet with the community once a month. All right, just on that particular beat. It was sort of like broken windows. What's going on in this little area, this beat, okay? Is it drag racing at night? Is it shooting? Is it drugs, prostitution? So we will work on that. But they cut all that out. I think that was real big under the Clinton administration. So now with this CAPS thing, you don't get a lot of participation, and you definitely don't get a lot of police participation because now it's like in the station. I think at first, correct me on that, they would meet at churches, but it was real big under Clinton. He had the COPS program, community-oriented policing program.
Okay.
And we spent a lot of money connecting with various entities in the community. Now we have a CAPS meeting. It's usually once a month, and they collapsed it all too. So it may not just be your particular beat and we'll meet at a church or a school in your area. Now we may have a bigger area because we don't have the resources there. So that's one way. Every police district, we have 22 police districts in Chicago, and there's a CAPS office with CAPS officers and a CAPS sergeant there. And you can call that office, and you can basically, if you want to have some type of police intervention or some type of police involvement, anything that you're doing in your community, you can just call them and you can set up a meeting and they'll come out.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about, it seems so, like it's been around forever, and I don't know if it's old school, but the old-fashioned neighborhood watch program. Is that still effective?
Let me see, neighborhood watch.
Like watching out for your neighbors and reporting suspicious activities over there, but even though you're not sure what's going on?
Well, it depends on the community. I have to think about it for a minute. I have to take off my Chicago police hat. When I was in a smaller community, like in Markham, Northwest Indiana, south suburbs of Illinois, we had neighborhood watch. We don't really have a neighborhood watch so much in Chicago because we had the community policing programs.
Okay.
Right.
So we would do things like, even here in Chicago, put your address on the rear of your house, get to know your neighbors. They had tips and clues. If leave the light on if you're going to be going vacation. You know what I mean? Have somebody get your mail. So yeah.
It sounds nice.
Yeah, in theory.
Although I want to say that I've been to a couple of these CAPS meetings in the properties that I own and the communities that I serve, and I gotta say that there's still community involvement there, and there's still police involvement there in those type of meetings. Now, they're busy. They tell you right there and then we have serious calls, right? So if you're going to call us, it has to have a certain amount of people calling us, and it has to be, a serious crime that's happening right in front of your house in order for us to be
911.
Okay.
Right. It's mostly for that relationship building with that police officer or that beat cop, right, that's in that area. And it's mostly for them to give you an update on what crimes are happening in the neighborhood. right? Which then you as a property owner can now be informed and can say, hey, we need to watch out for these type of things that are happening out here in this neighborhood or that are increasing.
Okay.
Right? And then that's where we, again, Wade having his connection with the police department, having his friends and stuff like that are still there, he can make the call and say, hey guys, this is what's happening over here. We need some help.
Herman Goldstein, he came up with what they call problem-oriented policing back in the 90s when it was real big. And a lot of us followed Herman Goldstein. We would look at communities and what was the problems. And I was on the west side at Area 4. We had a big problem with prostitution. And so we would work on that problem. Every month we would see if they got a different modus operandi, they taking the tricks over here, or they doing this and that. So the CAPS office, because it's been so decentralized and it's not funded properly, which is what people are crying for, more money to go into. And I think Biden is putting more money into that, is that we want to look at a problem, whatever the problem is in that community, whether it's drug dealing, whether it's prostitution, whatever that problem is, we work on it. That's why they call it problem-oriented policing, because we work on those problems with input from the community. It's non-emergency.
Right.
If it's something that's in progress, you should call 911. But we will meet every month, and even then the relationship, say, hey, here's my card. If you see something, let me know.
Right.
If things are changing. But a lot of that has taken a back seat, which is war on crime. I mean, crime has really gotten out of control in Chicago. And I'm really happy to see, and I've been saying it for years, that, the police and security should really work close, as well as the community.
Right.
Yes.
The police have a certain pride about ourselves that we can do it all. We don't need help from the community or the police, which is kind of wrong. But now we're seeing that the police is overwhelmed.
Right. They're way too busy, and
They're
they
way
need
too
the
busy.
help. They need all eyes on.
But what they don't realize is, hell, you probably got 5,000 to 10,000 police officers, such as myself, out here doing security.
Right.
So it's not like they have an image of a security guard, a guy that's, basically making $10 an hour. He's not well trained or whatever. But no, you got guys, you got commanders, you got chiefs, you got lieutenants. You got a whole plethora of police officers out here who are retired.
Right.
And, just to get off the subject for a minute, with our politicians and stuff like that, we could solve a lot of this attrition problem. Some of these guys are a lot younger than me, 50 years old. They can come back and do something in the department. But we have this rule where, once you retire, that's it. But now you look at the school system. You can retire as a school teacher and come back and teach 100 and some days a year. Why don't you let us come back?
Right.
You just let 35 years of experience walk right out the door.
Well,
That's interesting.
You're not passing down that policing knowledge.
Yeah, the
down
years
to
of
It's been the brain
experience.
drain. Yeah,
Right.
these young kids, you can make a commander. You could be a commander in 10 years.
Yeah.
In my day, it took you at least 20, 25 years.
Oh,
Right.
Now all of us are gone now.
Well, it's
You got the
because
blind leading the blind.
it's because again, it's a speeding of the process because of the lack of resources that they have. Right. Let's get this young guy. He's doing good. Give him his badge. Let's move him up to police sergeant.
And you can pay him half of what you paying me.
Right.
Right.
But then the flip side of that is he's green.
Yep. Right.
So.
He doesn't know too much about what's happening, and therefore mistakes happen.
right.
Right.
Right. Well, I think we covered a lot today.
Yes, we did.
Is there anything that either one of you want to add, or did we forget anything that is important?
Yes, I want to ask this question here, Wade.
Okay.
What should someone do when they're considering hiring a security team? What should they be looking for in this hiring of a security team?
I would say specialization. As one of my lawyer's friends told me, that if you want to get divorced, come talk to me. But if you got a criminal case or a will or deed or whatever, go talk to those people.
Right.
I specialize in housing. As you know, we have another security firm here. He does events, concerts. I don't do concerts.
Right. Okay.
I don't do bars. I can on a short basis, but mainly residential security, residential patrols is what I kind of focus in on. So I would say that if you're going to hire a company, look to see what they specialize in.
Right.
A guy that does all events, why would you want him doing residential security? I've been around this for like 10 years, even though I'm a security officer, a security company. But I'm learning a lot about what property managers do.
Right.
What are some of the issues? Because we work together. You know what I mean? I have a role to play in the safety of the property. So you will want somebody with that kind of knowledge that's familiar with properties.
That's a great answer. You know, in our industry, in real estate in particular, you know, we get investors that come to us and they're like, well, I want to invest in this and I want to do that, and eventually I want to build this and I want to try that. And, you know, you really have to slow them down and say the same thing you just said, Wade, is you have to specialize, because if you're not specializing in something, then you're not paying attention to all the moving parts of that one thing that you're focused on.
Too broad.
Right, it's too broad.
Right.
Well, I think you're awesome.
Yes.
Thank you, Wade.
All right.
You're awesome.
All
and
right.
if we have nothing else to discuss, I think
me down.
yeah, this was so great. All right. Well, it's nice to meet you. And thanks, George, for being here. And all right. I will see you next time. Thanks for watching Profit Knocks.